Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing another government shutdown. Another government shutdown under a Trump administration. So where do we go from here? What's going on? Who is the cause of it? How long will it last? How will it affect African Americans? Those are some of the questions that I intend to address in this video. All right, so let's start out by making sure we understand a little bit about this particular government shutdown. Hey, family, do you believe in the work we're doing? Does our content speak to you? Do you appreciate our in-depth legal analysis and political commentary from an African-American perspective? Do you believe it matters to our community? Then don't just watch from the sidelines. Please click that membership button and become a member of the 2% Club today. That's right, we need just 2% of our subscribers to become channel members. For just $4.99 a month, that's less than 20 cents a day, you'll help us keep creating powerful content that defends our democracy, demands justice, and develops a strong African American community. But if you want more, at $9.99 a month, which is only 33 cents a day, you'll get access to exclusive members-only live streams, bonus content, and behind-the-scenes updates. And for just $14.99 a month, which is under 50 cents a day, our top-tier members get access to live Zone calls, strategy sessions, and a direct voice in shaping this movement. We're not just building a YouTube channel. Folks, we're building a movement based on righteousness and justice, just what our community needs in a time of disinformation and division. So if you believe in what we're doing, click the membership button and join now. Become a member of the 2% Club today. Let's build something powerful together. All right, so we're going to go to an article written by ABC News. Okay, let's go over there now. And we're going to read a little bit, and then we're going to get into some of the particulars. All right, this says the U.S. government has shut down. Here's what to know. Both Republican and Democratic proposals that would have funded the government past Tuesday failed in the Senate during the 11th hour, effectively shutting down the government at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday. I was actually up last night when that happened. And looked at the clock and said, hey, the government has shut down. Now, you see I got big GOP lie. I want you to pay close attention to this paragraph. The federal government ran out of money after a Democratic-backed spending bill that would have extended health care subsidies under the Affordable Care Act and reversed cuts to Medicaid failed, as well as the GOP-backed stopgap funding measure that would have funded the government for 7 weeks also failed. But there is a great big GOP lie that is circulating online and main media as well. And that is that the government shut down because the Democrats desired to pay for health care, free health care, for undocumented immigrants. All right? That is a huge whopper. That is a lie, flat out lie. The Democratic Party put out a spending bill that had specific proposals, and not one of those proposals, not one, wanted to fund free health care for undocumented immigrants. And by the way, I think the premise of that assertion is false anyway, because undocumented immigrants in this country, they work, and therefore many of them pay taxes into the system. So it's not like they're getting free health care. But the even bigger issue is it is against federal law for undocumented immigrants to get health care except in emergency situations. So that's just a lie. That's a talking point. It's just a way to try to convince the public that the Democrats own this shutdown, although, I want you to hear this, although the GOP controlled the entire government, the White House, the Congress, the Supreme Court, federal agencies, the GOP control it all. So how can it possibly be the blame of the Democrats that the government is shut down when Donald Trump is over it all? And I mean, he controls it with a firm hand. The United States Supreme Court gave him even more executive power. So how is it that the Democrats, who are almost powerless in the government, how is it that they are the ones who should be blamed for the government shutdown? That's just ridiculous on its face, right? It's just ridiculous. So the question becomes, what exactly did the Democrats propose in their budget proposal? So let me show you that, because that should eradicate this lie about the Democrats causing this government shutdown. And by the way, the Democrats are quite often the one who will capitulate, right? Like Chuck Schumer did last time. They're the ones who want the government open. Okay? So how they get to blame for this is crazy. How Trump and MAGA and the GOP and Mike Johnson and all the rest of them even fix their mouths to blame the Democratic Party, which again is virtually powerless. Basically, all they're doing is responding to the GOP. And you could just tell in the demeanor and attitude of Trump and the GOP that they were perfectly okay with shutting down the government. And one of the reasons why is I believe they will take this opportunity to fire even more federal employees, and those fired federal employees thus far have been disproportionately African American. But at the same time, I think the Democrats had to do what they had to do because Trump is running roughshod over the country right now, and it was the right thing to do to push back and just do what you can do to try to get the government to remain open based on, the Democratic proposals. But if he wasn't willing to do that, then shut it down. Just got to stand up to a bully. At some point in time, you got to stand up to the bully. All right, so let's see what the Democratic proposals were that the Republicans rejected. All right, number one, the Democrats wanted to extend Affordable Care Act, so-called Obamacare, subsidy expansions. So let me tell you what that is. So all those folks, about 15 million or so people who depend on Obamacare, and they get subsidies to help lower their health care costs, all right, in the form of tax breaks. That is all due to expired in 2025. And so the Democrats said, we would like those subsidies to be expanded, to be at least protected, so that people's health care costs would not increase. Those folks who depend on the Affordable Care Act. The Republicans said no. Democrats fighting for poor working people who need that health care from Obamacare, from the Affordable Care Act. The GOP said no. The Democratic Party also wanted to reverse some of the cuts from the big, ugly bill that affect Medicaid. And what did the Republicans say? No. No, because they had already cut almost $1 billion from Medicaid pursuant to that big, ugly bill. So those were the two principal things that the Democratic Party was trying to get in the budget before they would sign onto what the GOP was proposing. All right. And then they also wanted a shorter funding extension. The Republican Party wanted to go deep into November. The Democratic Party did not want to. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries said no to that. They also wanted to restore funding to public broadcasting and limit executive spending authority and oversight. Now, again, the big issues were keeping people's health care who are on the Affordable Care Act low, as well as trying to get back some of that money for Medicaid, because there are a bunch of African-American people on Medicaid. A lot of black folks are going to be impacted by the cuts from Medicaid. And so Jeffries and Schumer were doing their best to try to get some of that money back. All right, so don't believe the hype. Don't believe the lies. Don't believe the lies that the Republican Party is putting out here. They're going to be out here telling these lies. And as I'm doing, you got to be out here telling your friends, your family, your church members, co-workers, etc., that this is not the doing of the Democratic Party. Again, how can it be when they're in such a weak position in terms of the government? All right, now, let's go back and read a little more of this article, and we'll get a little more perspective here. All right? So this goes on to say, following the two failed votes on Tuesday, White House Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought told federal agencies they, quote, should now execute their plans for an orderly shutdown, close quote. So it almost sounds like they were planning this shutdown anyway. And then when you think about the way that Trump was trolling, especially Jeffries, with these racist messages he was sending out, had Jeffries in one of those Mexican hats. I mean, how much racist can you be at such a serious time when people's health care is being cut and some folks, I mean, literally could die because they can't afford their health care? It's amazing. Anyway, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer urged Republicans to come to the negotiating table after the upper chamber failed to pass a measure to avert a government shutdown. And I saw last night that the Democratic Party were actually in the Senate chamber waiting for the GOP to come and negotiate. They wouldn't do any more negotiation because the GOP is determined to cut programs that help the working poor in order to fund that big tax break that goes to the ultra rich in this country. You with me? So this is not the Democratic Party's fault at all. They're not in a position to do much of anything. This goes on to say, we want to sit down and negotiate, but the Republicans can't do it in their partisan way where they just say it's our way or the highway, Schumer said at a news conference following Senate votes Tuesday night. The Senate is expected to vote again on Wednesday, likely on the same two measures that failed Tuesday. President Donald Trump and a bipartisan group of congressional leaders met at the White House on Monday afternoon to attempt to avoid the looming shutdown. I don't think they were serious, okay? Here's what J.D. Vance said. I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing, Vice President J.D. Vance said following the meeting. It doesn't sound to me like they are negotiating in good faith. Congressional Democrats are refusing to give Republicans the votes they need to pass a short-term funding agreement demanding overhauls to Medicaid cuts, yes, an extension to health care tax credits, yes, that Republicans don't want to touch. Why not? Because they're trying to protect those huge tax breaks that they're giving to the richest people in this country. All right, the last shutdown began in December 2018 during Trump's first term, and it was the longest shutdown in history, 35 days. During that shutdown, some federal workers began showing up at food banks, and many essential workers began to call in sick. Union officials said many of them couldn't afford the child care or the gas needed to get to work. By the time the government reopened in January 2019, about $3 billion in U.S. economic activity evaporated, never to be recovered, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Agencies have been slow over the last few days to release contingency plans, but some have warned of potential effects. All right? This goes on to say millions would be without pay. During the shutdown, as many as 4 million federal employees, including some service members, could go without a paycheck. Hundreds of thousands, including airport security guards, air traffic controllers, and certain members of the military, will be deemed essential workers and told to come to work anyway. In other words, despite not getting paid. ICE agents also go without pay. National Park could close, and the Smithsonian museums also typically close within a few days. Roughly 2 million troops could be forced to work without pay, including hundreds of members of the National Guard that Trump has deployed to U.S. cities. They're not going to get paid. Federal contractors, including hourly workers such as janitors and security guards, are not required to work and are also not guaranteed back pay. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill would continue to get paid their $174,000 annual salaries. That's what I was trying to get to. They're still going to get paid. But the people who earn the least and do the most are also appreciated the least. They won't get paid. Many of them will be expected to come to work. But the people who actually caused the government to shut down, the GOP, will still get paid. And of course, the Democrats as well. But the government is not shutting down because the Democrats is trying to provide huge tax breaks to the wealthy. The Democrats are standing on business trying to get working people affordable health care and to prevent it from rising. And also trying to keep folks on Medicaid by getting some of this money back that Trump took away from Medicaid, again, to help the wealthiest in the nation. So, folks, this is not the Democrats' fault. The GOP literally controls every facet of the government. And Trump even said himself that when there's a shutdown, he said this, I believe, in 2013, when there's a shutdown, the president is to blame for it because he's the leader. I actually agree with that. You got to look to the leader. Who is the leader right now of this country? Unfortunately, it is Donald Trump. So he should get the blame for the government shutting down, not Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer, because they would not capitulate to Trump's demands and instead stood on business for working people. All right, so we'll keep you updated. Hopefully this thing won't last for long. All right, but it is definitely going to disproportionately impact African American people. I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thanks for watching this video. And no matter what they tell you, you better stay woke.